Hello. This is Lorena with Synergy Behavior Solutions, and today I am going to be talking about play, which I have been talking about a lot the last couple of weeks. And I will continue to talk about for the next 4 weeks because I have a class coming up starting the 18th or something, all about play and using it as a vehicle for training, for building essential skills. Hi, Christine. And for investing in your relationship with your dog. So I want to talk a little bit about like what play is, and I think hi else, and I think that it's a really interesting topic to me and has been for a long time because my background is working with behavioral kids. So hey Kale. I think about Bilbo every single day. You should know that. So I want to say that, like, I worked with kids that had, hi, very excited. This is raw coated kibble, super special, yeah. So I worked with kids that had experience, like kids that are in the system, kids who have a history of trauma, kids in wilderness therapy, as well as like residential psychiatric. Hi, Kathleen. And I worked in kids like with kids in juvenile justice facilities. So that was like almost a decade. I'm not very old, and I've done almost a decade of working with kids in various settings and teens also. And if you know anything about how children process and recover from trauma, and if you know anything about how kids express themselves and learn, you know that it is almost entirely through play. So you will see a lot of kids like acting out their trauma and their experiences, and that's how they communicate with us and work through them, etc. So play is actually a really serious business for all species that engage in it. Now, it's interesting to note that I think that in terms of like what play is that essentially play is any behavior that actually doesn't have a point. There's no end goal or purpose. So the cool word to describe that kind of behavior is that behavior is autotelic. That means that it's the journey, not the destination. It's a behavior that is exhibited, or it happens just because doing it is reinforcing, not what they get from it. And so organisms always want to do things to survive, right? Making sure, so a lot of the choices that we make and the actions we take are all about obtaining things we need to or want. And when we play, that's not the case. It's also something that play is only engaged in like a pure and real way when an organism has all of their basic needs met. So when I'm talking about basic needs, I'm talking about like obviously food, water, shelter, proper temperatures. I would say belonging is also a big one. There's like a conversation around that when we talk about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the fact that belonging is actually a foundation need. So having like relationship, but also safety. So this is something that I come up against a lot in my work, or at least I don't want to say come up against. It's something that I see a lot. It's that folks struggle to utilize some concepts of positive reinforcement training because they skip the foundational aspect of the fact that their animal doesn't feel safe. So giving my dog food is not positive reinforcement and is not necessarily going to help resolve challenging emotional behavior struggles if the animal doesn't feel safe. So play is, in some ways, is like a really great way to tell if our dog is feeling safe. If my dog is able to engage in play, that's a really good sign that she's in a headspace to learn. So that's a really interesting concept if we think about it in a utilitarian way, but that's not what play is for. So interspecies play is a fascinating thing, and we shared a while back a study. I don't think anybody read it. We maybe got one like, but it's a super interesting study about a bunch of grad students that did a hide and seek experiment with lab rats. And interspecies play, if you think about it, is an amazing thing because we're so different from these animals, but they can play with us all day, and that's how we actually engage with them most of the time, or it should be, I think. And so these rats demonstrated that not only could they understand that they were playing a game and they engaged in it enthusiastically, they also were able to understand and switch between the roles. So they knew the difference between what it meant to be a hider and what it meant to be a seeker. Hello, Al. And and it's yeah, it was a post a while back. I'll share it in the comments today. Super interesting. Do you need to go chase this? Here, go chase it. He's obsessed with this kibble. Man, you increased the value of rewards one time. He's like, oh my gosh. So super interesting and really adorable is that these rats knew that when they were hiding, they needed to be quiet. So they would sit silently and hide until they were found or not, because they knew that in order to win the game, they understood the rules and the structure, they had to be quiet. And when they were seeking, the rats would squeak in laughter and joy finding the people. So that's a really interesting concept. Like, not only does it mean, like, if you don't love rats already, you should love them, they're amazing, but also the fact that these animals understood role reversal in different, the cool thing about play and games is that we actually construct an alternate reality, and then we choose to engage in it. And the rules of that reality are shared. They're fluid and subject to change, but they're shared, and there are rules. So super interesting that animals can engage in that kind of play with us, and that is why I train entirely through games. And that's really what we do at Synergy, is we play games. And it sounds, I guess, maybe silly when I say it that way, but play is serious business. So I did a webinar on this last week. It will be available. I talked for a long time, definitely went over time, but everybody stuck around, so it must have been interesting. But I think it's a really fascinating topic, and we still have so much to learn. Dogs are really interesting in terms of play because they, like humans, are one of the only species that plays throughout their entire lives, which is weird because most species that do engage in play, like most mammals, is that they play as babies and as juveniles in order to learn and practice adult skills, because play is really just a piece of a survival process or behavior chain that is exhibited out of context. So that's like chase and tug and tearing things apart, or the kittens that wrestle and like fight each other, etc. They're just doing things that in a different context, in a survival context, would not be play, but they're taking those bits and pieces and making their own little structure of like, let's do a game, right? But what's cool about dogs is that they're forever juveniles. They're forever children. They're just kids. So we have these like 2-year-olds that live with us for 15 years or whatever. And humans also do that. And if you don't, you should. So as a human and as an adult human, think about how you play and what play is to you. And think about what it looks like in your life. Like for me, it's definitely a lot of like moving my body in silly ways, dancing around, singing to my dogs, making strange sounds and making up words. I like to play Dungeons and Dragons. Video games, reading, being imaginative, drawing, like whatever play is for you. And another thing that I want to say before I jump into some demos in terms of play is play is also about being present. That's what's most important about it. It is possible to engage in a game and not be playing. And if you've ever spent time with a young child, which I think most people have at some point, you will know, hi Jenna, you will know that they pick up the instant you are not present. And the instant you are trying to push the play in a particular direction to achieve a goal, to control it, they disengage. They know. They're like, this is a co-created world. If you're not going to give and to take and to be a part of this in a way that is like equitable and present, they don't want to be there. It's true. So that's why I love kids, because they're like, they tell you what's up with their faces and with their words and with their behavior. And I think dogs do too. So, having said that, it is possible to engage in play without being playful. So that's like a different topic, which is I think the way that we sometimes use play or like flirting type play, and not necessarily in like a sexual or romantic way, but in order to cope with stress, right? So like the people who laugh a lot when they're nervous kind of thing. Dogs can do that too. So I just want to like put that as an aside, that just because an animal is exhibiting play behavior does not mean that they are being playful. They might just be trying to cope with stress. Different conversation, but still an important topic. So, different ways to play. So, during my webinar and then during this class that starts next week, I will be going over different modes of play. And generally, I'll be using like 3 different methods or modes of engaging in play with your dog. There's so many different ways to do it. I do it with my voice, where we like bark back and forth or make weird sounds or get my dog to howl or whatever. One time, Summer was part of a like a graduation ceremony for a teenager in wilderness therapy. And in this wilderness therapy program, we would all give the departing teenager a bead that we had carved out of wood in a circle, and then we would all howl until they were like released. And the first time that he did his ceremony, Summer howled along with everyone, and I think that was the most magical thing that had ever happened to that teenager. I did not expect it. I was like, that was cool. So he was a therapy dog. So having said that, I want to say that there are so many different ways to engage in it, but I'm just going to be talking a little bit about food, toys, and body play. I'm not going to engage in body play with Summer because he has arthritis and is a bit ouchy, but Yoshi and I do a lot of body play together, which is really just like pushing each other around and playing like a dog. If your dog does not have good bite inhibition, maybe don't do that with your dog, but even my dog Aggressive Pit Bull has excellent bite inhibition when she is playing with me. So, let's see, I want to just address some questions before I do a little bit of demo here. Let's see what we got. Jenna Harris, with a sometimes reactive dog, I'm always doubting what is appropriate play. Appropriate play. Yeah, that's a different topic. I will be covering that in my class, definitely talking about it, and I think it is so individual too. I think that some people might look at how I play with my pit bull. Actually, trainers have looked at me and how I play with my pit bull and have said that it's inappropriate, and for me, it's actually fine. So like, I think it is a little bit subjective, but there definitely are boundaries in terms of what is appropriate and what's not. And it's totally possible to like tease out why that's happening and be able to make a more well-rounded player, I think. So Christine, our rescue who recently passed rarely played. You could tell he never really experienced it. We did figure it out some. Wish we had this resource then. Yeah. I think that's the number one thing that I get is lots of people will say like, oh, my dog doesn't play. Doesn't like to play, doesn't like toys. My dog's not food motivated, which usually means the dog doesn't like to play. And that's actually why I created this class, is because I see that so many of my clients don't know how to play with their dogs. And it's not your fault. And that if the dog doesn't know how to play, that makes it even harder, because then there's nobody to tell us what to do. So yeah, absolutely. I think that there are dogs that don't play, and I think that that's because there's something missing there, and they should play. And I don't mean that in a judgmental way. I just mean there's something going on in terms of that dog's development or where they're at right now, that they're like haven't tapped into that side of themselves. And when I see clients like that, when I'm working with a client like that, I really usually have to come right out and say, like, I notice a lot of hesitation in your dog, and you can go through all of the training and go through all of the motions, but if he's never joyfully engaging in the process, you're not going to get that transformative change you want. So I'll spend 3 or 4 sessions just working on how do we do some no rules engagement and teach this dog how to play. So now that I've talked, of course, for 12 minutes, I have 3 minutes left to do a little bit of play, but it's not going to take very long. Oh, thank you, Al Joyce. Love listening to me. So engaging. Good to hear. Okay, so I have like a weird setup. My head might be cut off, but you should be able to still hear me. So I'm just going to take a handful of food and do some really simple food play with Summer. And I chose Summer today because I took Yoshi to a new sniff spot this morning, and she's pretty worn out. Yes, where we did a lot of play. But with Summer also, he is a big dog who now is quite ouchy during the day. And so, so I really want to show, like, no matter how old your dog is or what their physical capabilities are or what your physical capabilities are, you can still play. So I'm going to be seated for this. Get it? And I'm just going to have him just gently chasing food back and forth. And then maybe ask him to follow my hand in a circle. Get it? And it can be as simple as letting your dog chase their meal. What's this? Ready? Down. It can be as simple as having your dog catch treats. Ready? Oh, you're too close. You gotta try it from the top here. Look. Ready? Get it. Ready? Get it. Summer's very intense about his catch. His front feet always come off the ground when he's catching. He's very serious about it. But he's a catch pro. I can throw a treat from the kitchen all the way to the other side of the living room and he'll catch it. This is super fun and a really simple way to get my dog's energy out and to have them earn their food. So recently at the end of work, I usually work later in the evening, and I'm hungry and I'm tired and I go to bed pretty quickly. So if I'm in the kitchen and my dogs are like, okay, you've been on the computer all day, what are we gonna do? I will have their food in a bowl, and while I'm cooking and eating and probably watching some stupid TV show on my iPad, I'm tossing their food onto their beds or into different rooms for them to chase. And I might do that for their entire dinners. So they're actually quite tired at the end of that. And then I know that they've at least had some engagement and we've been able to do some silly play. It doesn't have to be a lot of energy. So having said a little bit of just like literally no rules, just get silly, ready, get it, and play with your dog. Have them chase some food around. And for Summer, that looks like a lot of eating food off the ground or catching it in the air. For Yoshi, it's a lot more movement. I'm usually moving throughout the room. She's going between my legs and around and weaving and lots of silliness. But for Summer, I want a little bit less energy and arousal so he doesn't get hurt and doesn't get sore later. And because he's just a big dude. So having said that, I just want to do a little bit with toys. I'm not going to get into like a big thing about toys. I think I'll probably do a live specifically on toys pretty soon because I did one at the beginning of the summer and it was really popular. I think we should revisit that topic, especially because I'm always learning and I'm always learning new things. So first of all, most people, I feel like, are not playing tug correctly with their dogs. I am definitely one of them. I am still learning. But the things that I have learned have made a really massive difference in their ability to play. I'm really fortunate in that both my dogs love to play tug, and I have a lot of toy drive. So that's not really been an issue, but I absolutely still know how to build toy drive. And I will say, if your dog does not have an interest in toys, I suggest you go and look for animal fur tug toys. This is rabbit skin with a bunch of fleece. And think about long-handled toys that can be like a little squirrel running away. Most dogs will become pretty interested in those. So for Summer, I don't like long-handled toys because I don't want him to do any sharp turns. So I don't want any like zigzagging and quick like angles. So I actually go for stuff that's a little bit shorter, but still long enough that, you want to play? Can we get it? It's like, I don't know if I want to play today. Ready? Get it. Go get it. Uh-oh, you don't want to play? Here, come here. Get it. So Summer used to be a dog that I'm gonna put the food away. He's like, I really like that raw-coated kibble stuff. Ready? Get it. Summer used to do a lot of chuck it, and I do have regrets for throwing the chuck it 50 times a day for, 5 years or whatever of his life. It's part of the reason that he's in pain now. We'll never do it again. Also, unpopular opinion, I do not think that fetch is play. However, you can incorporate some retrieve into your tug games like I just did. So short little runs to get it, maybe even holding the dog back and then releasing them, or hiding the toy somewhere and turning it into a scent game is very different than endlessly exploding after a ball. So Summer is pretty good at playing tug. He always has been. I can't really take credit for his incredible drop. That was entirely just like him. He's just great at it. But you'll see that with Summer, I don't really have to do, like, it doesn't have to be a big, energetic thing. I don't need to lift him up off the ground or swing him around. I just play a little bit. I just play a little bit with pressure. Ready? Get it. And when he comes back, he's rewarded with more tug and more play. And you can play with how close you are to the dog, coming in close, and then back, and that kind of pressure for some dogs is too much, but over time you can build it. Because Summer didn't used to like it when I had my face close to his, but now he growls and gets excited. Drop. Get it. So you can use this to obviously build lots of really nice impulse control. You can ask for behavior chains. Drop. Down. That was a bow. Down. Get it. And if you can, come here. Are you done? And you can also teach your dog to switch back and forth between play with toys and play with food, which is super interesting if you have a dog that is particularly food motivated or particularly toy motivated. So Yoshi is insane about toy play. Like, it's sometimes maybe not even playful. It's a little bit like scary. And so for me, a really big goal was I wanted her to be able to switch from toys to food, which was not something she could do for years. Now she can, and she will even switch from toys to kibble, which has massively changed the way that we can use toys for positive reinforcement for her, because her lack of self-control around them has dramatically increased. So there's a lot of different ways. There's like so many different levels of play. People take like entire days long workshops about play. There's a lot that can be done. But I encourage you to think about it as no rules. Don't think about having a goal in mind or like, what is this going to teach my dog? Why am I doing this? Just do it for the sake of enjoyment and for the sake of your dog wanting to engage with you. Even if that's as simple as like my challenge to you is if you don't already ditch the food bowl, think about taking 50 treats. Get 50 treats in a bowl, and I want you to use every single one of those treats in one day to get your dog moving and interacting with you. Even if it's just running back and forth or just teaching them how to catch a treat. Try it and see what happens. Maybe try it for 5 days straight and see what sort of behaviors your dog starts to exhibit that is different than what they have before. Good job. Get it. All right, I'm going to go because I went over time. Any other questions? I don't think so. Our dog loved food play. He also loved bubbles. That's cute. I like that. I've seen lots of dogs into bubbles. I like also watching the dogs play with balloons. If your dog is the kind who's going to pop it, maybe be careful. But the ones that just like endlessly pop them up in the air, that's super fun. Look at what your dog already loves to do and turn that into your game with them. Have a good day. I will see you all next week.